Welcome, everyone. We're delighted you're here to join us. This webinar is a workshop designed to introduce you and familiarize you with the new registry portal that will be visible at usshortcodes.com after the transition is complete as of January 1st, 2026. We are recording this webinar, which is why microphones and cameras are off. And on the advice from our General Counsel, we do not accept AI assistants who wish to join the call. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A function found in the toolbar. Our team will answer as many questions as time permits. For questions we are unable to address, we will send a typed response and follow up as needed. The recording of this webinar will be posted to the transition website in the coming days. Without further ado, let me turn it over to Ariel Reed and John Tulai, who will walk us through the slides and the presentation we have for today. Thanks again for joining.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Hi, everyone. This is the third and final workshop that we are going to do ahead of transition, and I am delighted to have John from Aegis Mobile joining me today so that we can talk and dive deeply into onboarding of brands and content providers inside of the new registry. The process in terms of vetting is not going to be changing when it comes to how Aegis Mobile is vetting brands and content providers, but the framing and the way that you are onboarding those brands and content providers does have some differences inside of the new registry, and that's what we're going to cover today. And John is going to be helping me with some best practices and some tips based on his experience working inside of the registry as CTIA's partner for the last year. With that said, what we have covered together so far is one, setting up your account and user management and adding and editing payment methods. I did a tiny bit of healthy stalking ahead of this call, and so I am pleased to say thank you so much. Over 90% of you that are here actually have already gone in and completed all three of the steps and are good to go for transition. So thank you so much for doing that. If you have not gone through those steps yet, there are videos, written content for how to do that. You can also feel free to set up time with me or with someone on our customer success team. We'd be happy to walk you through it. We also covered how to lease a short code, how to manage all of your short codes in the portfolio, and how to manage billing. Both of those webinars were recorded and are posted to the transition site inside of the video library here. Are there any questions from previous content or material before we hop in that anyone came burning to start us off with? I've learned how the Q&A works inside of here, so hopefully we don't miss questions. Otherwise, please do raise your hand, tell me that we're missing something. Awesome. Then with that said, let's dive into the registry. What we're going to cover today is primarily inside of the brand hub of the registry, but the exact same functionality is found inside of content providers as well. They work the same way. So for brands, when you come in here, what you'll be able to see is all of the brands that you are either in process of onboarding or have already successfully completed onboarding. And what you'll see over here are filter cards that allow you to look at those brands based on where they are at inside of the onboarding process. So in progress means that you have begun to input information about that brand, but have not yet submitted it for vetting. That is one of the changes that we have inside of the new registry, is that you are able to onboard brands independent of leasing short codes. And I'll show you the wizard in a moment, but that wizard also goes step by step through the different components of data that we need for each of those brands, and it auto saves as you move through the wizard. So if you need to step away or find additional information from one of your partners, you can do so without having to start the form all over again. Under review is where you'll be able to see brands that are currently sitting with Aegis for vetting or waiting for the Auth Plus to happen. which is that PIN verification email that's sent from Aegis. Needs action is if there are any revisions that are needed for that brand, those fall into that category, or any brands that need revetting, and I'll show you examples of those later on in the demo. Awaiting assignment is once a brand has successfully been vetted, but has not yet been associated with a short code. You can very easily filter to those there. And then completed is where they have gone through the vetting process, have short codes that are associated with them, and we are good to go and off to the races. There's also a search bar here, so it's very easy for you to pull up a brand, particularly once that brand list starts to get big for some of you, I know. So very easy to search there. Or if you want to search for what brand is on a particular short code, you can do that inside of the Brand Management Hub, but it's also available for you here as well. And you can see it. Everything is clickable, so if you wanted to head off to that short code itself, you can do so pretty easily and go through all of the different steps that we went through on our last call together. And all of these column headers are also sortable. So if you want to be able to pull all of your government brands together, for example, or charitable organizations, you can do so by utilizing that filter. Any questions about the functionality of the Brand Hub? I think it's pretty intuitive other than maybe some of the definitional stuff up here. But once you get the hang of it, I think pretty simple to peek through. Fantastic. Let's add a new brand. The first thing that you'll be presented with is to identify the program type. Oh,
there's one question.
amazing.
Wasn't clear on the difference between in progress and under review.
Awesome. Yeah, great question. So in progress is when you are still putting information in about a particular brand. It is before it has been submitted off for vetting. So this is where I have started to add a new brand and I can still come in here, continue the process and continue to move through the wizard depending on where I stopped and keep adding information before I submit it off. Versus under review means it's currently sitting with Aegis and is waiting either for the vetting process to complete or for the PIN to be authenticated with the brand itself. Good question.
Good answer.
I try. So, for program types, when you're coming through, similarly to when you were leasing a short code and needed to identify the type of code that this particular brand was going to be leveraging, you have 4 different options here. By and large, most will fall in under standard. However, for those of you that do partner with government, charitable organizations, and political organizations, there are a couple of additional fields that we require for those. So you identify the agency type, the website, and then if there's any other information that you believe the vetting agent would need in order to be able to authenticate that that government, charitable, or political organization is who they say they are, you can add it in here, something like an extra website, number of years that they've been operating, that type of thing. Same idea inside of charitable organization, but asking about the Better Business Bureau as well as Charity Navigator, which one of those two the charitable organization is associated with. And for Charity Navigator, they need to be certified with either 3 or 4 stars in order to be onboarded into the registry. Political program types, establishing which type they are, and then any sort of filing URL that's associated with them goes inside of here. By and large, though, most fall in under standard, so that's what we'll do today. First things first is popping in that brand name. We give you the ability to add the DBA right inside of here. What's really nice about this is oftentimes this is the colloquial way that your organization will refer to a business, and you can pop it in just there while still including that legal entity brand name, which is what Aegis is going to be leveraging when they're going through the vetting process. And actually, JT, I know you had some thoughts on that legal entity name when we were chatting ahead of this meeting. If you want to talk through that while I fill in some of this extra information, that would be awesome.
Sure, that would be great. So what we're looking for, we're going to be verifying that legal entity name against the federal employer identification number. And so what we need there is something that is going to match up in IRS records. We are checking directly with the IRS to make sure there is a match there. That sometimes is very straightforward, but sometimes can be confusing because the IRS can be confusing, and you can also have had the company that you're trying to enter may have had multiple names throughout the course of its life cycle. If the original name was registered a long time ago and name changes were not filed with the IRS, you may find that ultimately you have to go back to the original name there, and that can cause confusion. We totally understand that. So what you'll want to do is, if the name that has to go in there in order to get a match with the FEIN is different from the way the company is currently named and it doesn't get recognized that way, you'll want to include their current name under the DBA field as well so that we can recognize that there as well. So it's really kind of a, what should I do? Well, it depends, and we can't really predict. But we know that, for example, if you have that EIN confirmation letter or the EIN designation letter, that original letter, if 99.9% of the time, if you put just what's on the first line of that letter in the name field in that letter, that will match up to IRS records.
Beautiful. You will have noticed that I added a brand logo down here. This is completely optional. It is not part of the vetting process at all, but it does make the brand hub look nicer and sometimes easier to scan. You'll see when we go back into the brand hub, I'll draw your attention to it. If you don't add a image or a logo, all that happens is you'll see that the letters are there as the logo itself, but totally up to you. We are validating addresses, same as when we were going through inside of your account, just to make it easier. Then we ask you for your legal entity type. Most folks will fall in under corporation or an LLC, but this again will be found inside of those legal documents that JT was just talking about. Country of registration, we accept all across the globe. Most will fall in probably under the US, but we do give you the flexibility here to pick the country of registration. Organization URL, you are going to want to utilize the business URL that's associated with the brand that you're onboarding. Stock market symbol, if it is available, it is an optional field along with estimated annual revenue. Both of these are used as part of the vetting verification process, but are not required. It just helps strengthen the vet.
May I make a point on that?
Yes,
Ariel?
please.
So you'll notice that you had a country that you specify as part of your address, but we also collect country of registration. That's because sometimes, and we see this a lot with Canadian companies, but it happens with other countries as well. They may be a Canadian country with a Canadian address, but they do so much business in the US that they have a US EIN. And they probably also have a Canadian business number. So we need to know which country we should look in for that registration, which is why we asked for the country of registration. So that country of registration is the country that is associated with the identification number that you supply.
Excellent call out. And the two do operate independent of each other, so they don't have to match.
There's a hand raised.
Yeah.
Lucas asked the question. I published what it is, but there's someone else. Craig, I didn't see the last name. Hand raised, but didn't publish a question. Lucas's question was, if I need more than one DBA, how do you do it? he says a comma or semicolon to separate. I think, John, you'll handle that. We'll send it across to you, and you can handle it that way, correct? If I understand how your system works.
Right. I don't know the data exchange details, but I believe that's the way you collect it.
Yeah.
Boop.
When
Yep.
people have their hand raised, I don't know if we want to unmute them or you want to just ask me to publish the question in the.
I was going to say, if you have your hand raised and you were just trying to draw our attention to the Q&A, thank you so much. If you have your hand raised because you have a question, up in the top of your Teams, you'll see a Q&A button. If you wouldn't mind clicking that and typing your question in, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Subsidiaries and legal affiliates, this actually also kind of comes to the who's associated with. So if you have a brand that also is planning on leveraging subsidiaries or organizations that they are affiliated with, you can enter them here. Whenever I hear about Pipely, it always makes me think about Mario Party. So maybe I'm associated with Luigi and with Mario Inc. You can add as many as you would like. And JT, I know that Aegis has a process that they go through with associating those subsidiaries.
Right. So we are making sure that anybody, whether it's a DBA or a subsidiary or legal affiliate, that they're actually a legal associate of the company, not just by contract, but by form. So this is not about affiliate marketing, this is not about allowing multiple unassociated companies to market on the same short code. This is saying, hey, these are all part of the same company. So, for example, you could have a large parent company that's the one that's registering, but they're going to also register their subsidiaries like Coke and Coca-Cola and their subsidiaries. They would list their subsidiaries, and so Sprite could also do advertising through that short code because they are legally affiliated with Coca-Cola.
Beautiful. FEIN, this is the legal identifier that most businesses are accustomed to leveraging to identify themselves. Important to call out here that we do have field validation when it comes to the formatting, but that field validation is based on the country where you identify that brand is registered in. So for example, you can see that we're formatted for the US here. This is standard FEIN that we're all used to seeing by and large. Save and leave. If I were to come back here and change that country of registration to, let's go to the Bahamas. Love warm places this time of the year. And told you, always something whenever you come in here. Save and leave. Whenever you step through, there we go. It takes that field validation and puts it into your ability to put whatever that number is. And I know that was a pain point that we had with the previous registry because it only accepted US tax identifiers. So we wanted to call it out here that that is a change, and you can now do that within the registry itself.
Right. So there's no more need for the out of band emails and remembering the right code to put in. This is a huge improvement and should allow us to process things much more quickly.
Brilliant. Additional identifiers, this again is to help facilitate the verification process. The more information you provide, the easier and faster it is for Aegis to be able to identify that particular entity, which makes everything flow through. But again, these are not required, but are available to you as additional identifiers if you have them. Brand point of contact. So this is the person that is going to be on the line for you. If there are any questions about that short code, this is what is being logged in the registry. As the person who is knowledgeable about the short code program, they are also the person that is going to be receiving that Auth Plus email from Aegis. So you want to make sure that this is the individual that you as the partner have regular contact with because there is an action that they are going to need to take.
And it needs to be an employee of the brand.
Yes. Needs to be an employee of the brand. And something to note, and you can see that it pops up here, the system is checking to see if the domain matches that organization URL that you had originally submitted under general brand info. If they don't match, which there are sometimes very legitimate reasons why they wouldn't, it is a flag that gets pulled, and it does typically require additional review to be able to make sure that it is there's a legitimate reason for why they do not match up. You'll see that the reminder is here just to make sure that a fat finger didn't happen. The system won't stop you from submitting when there's a mismatch, but it does call your attention to it because it could delay the vetting process.
Right. So we have to do additional research to make sure that the email domain that's submitted is associated with the legal entity that you submitted.
You are also able to add additional contacts if you want to have them logged inside of the registry. However, the only person who will receive the Auth Plus email is that primary brand point of contact. And then last step is to review all of the information. You can give it an eyeball. If there's anything that doesn't look quite right or you want to update it, you can click on the pencil and it'll pull you right back there. You can make the updates that you need and then continue to move through the process. As soon as you're happy with it, you just need to authorize that you are authorized to submit the information and that it's accurate to your knowledge, and then you can go and submit the brand for vetting. Something to call your attention to. Once you submit the brand for vetting, it goes off to Aegis. You are no longer able to remove that brand from the system. Up until this point, if you've got a brand that's just sitting in progress, for example, there's our Pipely Connect that we've been working on together. If I decided that REL Inc. we're no longer going to need them inside of the registry, I'm able to delete them at this point in time by clicking that button. Make sure I'm ready to do that, delete it, they'll be gone. Once you submit them to Aegis, they are inside of the registry. Next year, we're looking at a feature and exploring the possibility of how it would be that we could take them into sort of like an inactive state so that it continues to be logged, but is no longer appearing inside of the registry. That is not a feature at this time, but if it's something of interest to you, do let me know. It's definitely something we're exploring. Once you hit submit to Aegis, it will appear inside of this under review tab. And you will be able to track the progress of where that particular brand is at by clicking on the brand and going to status and shortcodes and scrolling down to the vetting history. You'll be able to click on and see where it is at inside of the process. Because we're inside of a staging environment here, there's lots of different kinds of statuses as we're testing. So what we did was we grabbed a screenshot for you for what you can expect to see, both from a vetting history perspective as well as an Auth Plus email example. So the flow and some of the questions that I've been hearing, and JT jump in whenever, but there's a lot of question around like, when is my customer going to receive the email? I want to make sure that I'm preparing them, or I think the email got sent, but I'm not seeing it. My partner's not seeing it. What do I do? So your source of truth is inside of the registry. When that email has been sent to your partner, you will see an email verification of primary point of contact, waiting for contact action. There is a potential delay from the time when you hit submit for vetting to when that email goes out to your partner. And that is because Aegis is running a lot of their vetting process ahead of contacting your partner to make sure that all of the information is solid and sound. JT, I'm going to let you provide a little bit more color to that.
Sure. So We are running automated systems, but our automated systems have manual backups, and by backup I mean when we cannot be 100% confident that the automated result is correct, we off-ramp that to an investigator to review the record and make sure that we're handling it correctly. So when everything just lines up and we're able to process everything automatically, we should be sending out that email within well under a minute from the time it's submitted. However, if it gets off-ramped to an investigator, that may take up to 1 business day. So if you were to submit it late on a Friday afternoon, you're probably not going to see it until Monday. So that's kind of what's going on in there. But we are in general, even if a vet has to go to manual review, we're doing that typically within 1 business day.
Wonderful.
Now, what we cannot control is how long it takes the brand to respond to the email. And we also cannot control whether their firewalls are blocking the emails. So if you see that the PIN email was sent out and your customer is saying, well, I haven't seen it, please do reach out to the registry. We have the ability to regenerate PIN emails, and we also can use alternate processes if we have to make sure that that email gets through.
Wonderful. And the email verification itself, the leaseholder, so the person who submitted that vet, is also being copied on the Auth Plus email? Am I remembering that correctly? Or it is just going to the partner?
To my knowledge, it's just going to the partner.
Okay. Brilliant. I feel like this is often where I get the most questions. So if you have any more, feel free, pop them in the chat. JT is definitely the expert here.
A good recommendation is to whitelist that from email address from verify at usshortcodes.com.
Brilliant.
There is a question. I don't know if you guys saw it. Just came in. It says, so if needed, how do you add more than 1 DBA on the field? Did you guys cover that one?
Yeah, we
We covered that
covered
one earlier.
Apologies.
No, thank you for keeping an eye. I appreciate it.
Um,
It does.
one-
Go ahead,
go ahead.
Jeff.
I was going to say, on the vet itself too, we've had some asking questions about as they're processing those vets on timing and such. John, you were mentioning how the email that does the Auth Plus only goes to the brand client, which is true. There is a reminder email though that is sent, which is somewhat of a difference from what we will be going to. Ariel, I don't know if you want to talk to that, or right now I think everyone is expecting to receive an email that says, hey, we're sending the Auth Plus email to your brand client. Be sure to alert them to the process that'll be coming their way so that it can be done in a timely manner, and that will change. And you probably already mentioned that in your talk track.
Yeah, so as far as I'm aware, there is not that reminder coming from the registry. I'm not sure if there's something inside of Aegis's system.
Yes, there is.
There we go. So that's how the partner is notified that the Auth Plus email is going out.
There's a question on the link now asking, is there a backup process to the Auth Plus email pathway for authenticating someone if they can't get the email?
So
John,
if they can't get, yes, if we still have to, right now, the only method of verifying is using an email process. But if there is trouble getting through, we have had success by directly contacting the representative with sometimes the email systems, the firewalls strip off the email, strip off the content of the email, or simply block it. So if we can establish an email contact between an individual at Aegis on the vetting team and the individual at the brand, then we're able to follow up and complete the PIN verification process. So we've worked out a number of ways. If they're having problems, definitely don't wait. don't be afraid to speak up, let us know, and we can get it closed out pretty quickly. There's no need to be waiting days or weeks for this to happen.
100%.
Okay. A couple more questions have come in. Is there a way for a vet going out for the yearly renewal, I guess, to get a heads up before they go to the client? This year they were sent, in the blind.
Yes.
I think you're going to address that in coming up here. And they were
Wow.
worried about they think it's a scam, what's going on. So yeah, why don't you talk to that concept here in a minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's one other question, just as you add this. Are you tracking vetting success rates to see if these improvements will increase the success rate? Is there a way to provide feedback? And I think, sort of yes being the answer.
I am, you will find in working with me, I'm an absolute data nerd. And I love being able to, because we're starting fresh, what's nice is we are baselining and we're going to be able to look and see how a lot of the changes that we're making are helping to move things through the process, and the cadence that they move through. So the answer to your question is absolutely yes. And I will be extraordinarily celebratory about the fact that everything is happening faster or more successfully. And if it is not, then absolutely would love to hear suggestions as y'all are boots on the ground that are utilizing the process. If we're seeing that there isn't a change where we expect it, what can we do to help make that change happen? 100%.
And then another auth plus question. This is a popular area, I guess, John. Is there an SLA for the auth plus process?
So there's an SLA on the part that we can control, which is how quickly we generate the PIN letter. So how quickly we complete the vetting process and get that letter out to your brand. We don't have control over how long it takes your brand to respond.
I do
And,
think
and as
follow-up
I
is-
stated, to be quantitative, our SLA there, what the average time that we're trying to hit is 3 business days, but we are typically at this point hitting 1 business day turnaround.
cool.
How long
And-
is an email good for? How long to the PIN last?
I'm trying to calibrate to this particular ecosystem because each ecosystem has its. My recollection is it's 7 days. And then if they go beyond, the person's on vacation, there's holidays, whatever, all you have to do is request a reissue, and we can, even if it's expired, we will reissue pins up until a total of 45 days.
Okay. One more question for you. A small business that only has social media presence and not a website, will this affect the vetting process / approval?
So the website URL is not a showstopper, but the email domain is at issue, and CTIA has certain policies that they have set to allow companies that make that meet certain criteria to use a non-corporate email domain, but the carriers are this is a carrier requirement, and they're insisting that we have to have a corporate domain for the majority of companies. So what we're really concerned about more than anything is making sure that we can associate the email domain, positively associate that with the legal entity that's submitted.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. All right. Awesome engagement. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Keep them coming. Marcy, I haven't forgotten about you. I promise. We will get to revetting in just a moment. So once you have put your brand through vetting and submitted it, PIN has happened. There are one of 2 things that could happen. One is that Aegis could find something that needs revision, and that will be popped back to you inside of this needs action section. If there are any revisions that are needed, They will be on the brand profile itself, and what that revision is will be identified for you, and you can easily come back in to edit that submission. So for this particular example, we're talking about domain ownership, which I think goes back to the question at hand here, right? I don't have a domain. I've got Facebook presence. What can I do? So first thing, of course, is to hop into your submission and make sure that the address that you provided is indeed like nothing fat fingered. If it is all looking copacetic and it is what you expected to submit for the vetting process, this is where you would reach out to our customer success team. They'll work with you and Aegis to submit the evidence that you have proving out your organization is who they say they are and move you through the process. Others, like your country of registration or your address, need to be updated. You can simply come in here, make those updates, submit for vetting once more. The other thing that can happen when you go through vetting is that it happens successfully and it's completed. Once that occurs, your brand will be sitting in awaiting assignment, and you can come in and associate it with a shortcode. So let's do that process, and then I will go through what happens when the vet at the end of the year expires. So to associate a brand with its shortcode, come in here, click Assign Shortcode. We have, and this is going to pop you into the Shortcode Management Hub. In order to see which codes you have available that don't have a brand as yet, all you need to do is click on Needs Onboarding Action. The process for associating a shortcode with its corresponding brand, content provider, and ASP, we've termed onboarding inside of the registry. And to be able to see any codes that are not started as yet and looking for a brand to be associated, you can filter to the not starting status here, or you can search for the code itself. To start the onboarding process, click that Not Started button. You'll need to pick your intended usage. So that is either just pure brand. Again, this is where most will end up, which is where you have a brand that was a program type of standard, government, or charitable. Or if you have a political brand, you'll choose that political type. Shortcode registrant, this is the information about you. It will automatically fill in for you. And if there's another contact that you want to associate with this particular code that's inside of your account, you can do so here. And address validation. Thank you, U.S. Postal Service. Only brands that have been successfully vetted are going to appear here. So if you come in here and you start searching for a brand, I did this one already. Sorry, toddler on the brain. If you're not seeing a brand that you expect to see here, odds are it has not been successfully vetted as yet, and you're going to want to go back to the brand hub to see where it is sitting inside of the process. But for those that have successfully completed the process, you can select them here. You are able to associate multiple brands with a particular code, although it is something that I know is not best practice inside of the industry. Content provider, again, same. If the content provider has been vetted successfully, they will appear here. If you're not seeing them, odds are they're still sitting in your queue waiting to be successfully vetted, and you can go check on them there. Select it here. DCA, your short list is pre-populated for you. And then application service provider is a free text field for you to type it in. And that's it. You come in here, do that eyeball test. If there's something that doesn't look quite right, click on that pencil. It'll take you back to that step. You can make any changes that you'd like to. Click the I confirm, and that finishes onboarding. The very last step that you'll want to do to complete the onboarding process and to complete any submission process that you have inside of carrier campaign management systems is to download a statement. This is the other sort of big change when it comes to the new registry and the existing process. So existing process today is that you use the lease receipt and append that to any of your campaign management applications. Now you're going to want to append this statement. This is the accreditation that you have a code that is paid for, a brand that has been vetted, and that brand is indeed good to go, along with its content provider, DCA and ASP. So it has a lot more information for our carrier partners to be able to look at and to cross-reference for inside of your campaign submission. Any questions about that? And then I will get to the revetting process.
No questions as of yet.
Awesome sauce. I'm doing an awesome job explaining then is how I'm going to take that. All right. So a brand that needs to be revet. We're going to come back here. All vets are good for 365 days. So 2 weeks prior to brand expiration, you'll receive an email from the registry letting you know that your brand is coming up for revet and that the vet is going to expire, and asking you to come into the registry to validate that the information that we have on file is still accurate. And this is a big change. So in answer to your question, Marcy, are we just going to automatically start sending out Auth+ pins? No, we are not. All of our partners, so all leaseholders, are going to need to come in to take the affirmative action to submit each brand for revetting on an annual basis. Very simple. You come in, you hit that submit for revetting button. It's going to take you straight to the review and submit page. If everything is the same, nothing has changed, you take the action to submit for revetting, and that is when the vetting process kicks off, and you can expect that Auth+ email will go out within that 1 to 3 day period to your partner. If anything has changed, this is your opportunity to make the update. And again, it's as simple as clicking that pencil, making the update out, and away you go.
One of the things to really focus on there is making sure that the point of contact has not changed, because there's just so many dynamics, especially in small companies, that is the most likely thing to change.
Yeah, 100%. And then submit.
There's one question. Yeah. Is there anything in this registry that allows a carrier or aggregator to report a bad actor and then get access list from all aggregators? Is there anything in this platform that prevents someone from adding a bad brand? Is the question.
Prevent someone from adding a bad brand in terms of for you to be able to see.
Once it's identified as a bad brand, yes, we can restrict a brand. So the platform does allow, if we figure out that a brand's got something, there's something wrong with this guy, he's doing something wrong, there's a restrict functionality in, you won't see it here, but from the back end, we can restrict it so it can no longer be used.
Right. There are also lists that we receive from the carriers when the carriers have determined that there are problems, and that shows up in the vetting. So if we see the brand falls on one of those carrier lists, we'll flag that.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep the bad guys out. Last thing that I wanted to cover was the editing of a brand, and there really isn't very much difference from what you just saw when we were submitting for revet, because essentially what you are doing is you are going in to edit that brand. So you don't have to wait until the vet has expired in order to come in and update any information inside of the registry. It is worth noting, though, that if you change some critical fields, things like brand name, it will trigger a revet So the whole process starts again. It gets submitted off to Aegis. But once that approval comes back through, it moves the vetting date to 365 days from that new approval. So just something to keep in mind. Any of the fields that will trigger a revet in here will pop up with this change requires a submission for revetting, and you won't be able to move through the process without it flagging it for you. So you're not going to make a change and then all of a sudden have an Auth Plus pin go out to your customer without realizing it. Same here, where you will know if you're resubmitting your brand for vetting again. But some things like making an update to a business address, for example, I don't think triggers the revet. Save and leave. And I think that is everything that I wanted to cover inside of the registry itself. I know, JT, that you came with some best practices for us. So I think we can move into that. Before I hop out of the registry, were there any additional questions about the platform itself?
Nothing yet, no.
Awesome. All righty, then. There you go, JT, take it away.
Right. We just have some frequently asked questions that we thought we'd address. And I think we've probably already addressed some of these in the course of the discussion, but the importance of listing DBAs and subsidiaries. Why do you have to put that in? Well, this is to support our monitoring efforts. We need to make sure that whatever brands are or whatever brand representations are that show up in market when we go out and engage the short codes, that those presences are registered in the short code registry. So if you have decided that, oh, we're going to call ourselves this very different name that doesn't match to the legal name, and we don't see that anywhere in the registry, that will cause a violation to be issued, because what is showing up to the consumer is not what is in the registry. So that is a change. It was effective last year, and probably a lot of you have been hit with some of those changes. But that is part of the job that we are hired to do, is making sure that everything that is showing up in market is as it was submitted to the registry. Regarding FEIN, I think we already talked about most of these. If the company name has changed since the FEIN was issued, you may, it all depends on what you did with, or what your brand did with the IRS and whether they registered the new name with them. IRS doesn't give any insight into what's happening inside it, so we don't know for a given case whether they are going to match up or not. So it doesn't hurt to try the current name if the company thinks they've done the right thing and registered that with the IRS, and many times that will just match up automatically and everything goes fine. But if you find yourself in that situation, you say, well, they did have a name change and it didn't match, go ahead and submit the original name and put the current name in the DBA field, and that will be able to get you through the process. Government organizations without an independent FEIN, that is an interesting situation that arises. Very often governments hold the EIN at a relatively high level, so a particular department or directorate within a department or with an agency may say, well, we don't have our own EIN. They will actually show up under they may show up under the next level up or several levels up. So they just kind of need to say, okay, well, what is the next level up in my organization that actually has an EIN, and use that. We understand that can sometimes be tricky, and we've even run into issues in certain foreign governmental entities and NGOs where we have to go through kind of out of band processes to try to come up with identity. So we've run into some edge case challenges there, but by and large, and especially with U.S. organizations, whether it's at the local, municipal, state, or federal level, there is going to be an EIN that is available that is going to cover that organization. So it's just a matter of getting to the right level within that organization and submitting it. So as an example, a ship within the Navy doesn't have its own EIN, but the Department of Navy certainly does have one. And so that's the way we handle it. Likewise, a lot of times we have members of Congress that are registering to do their own messaging as part of their official capacity. And so there is an EIN that covers all of the House of Representatives. There's a different EIN that covers all the senators. And so they will enter with their name in the DBA field, and then the brand name, that legal entity name, would be the United States Senate or United States House of Representatives, and they would put in the EIN for that appropriate organization. So that should give you kind of a good clue as to how we look at it. We already talked about international customers with US FEINs. Just really important to let us know what country we should be looking in for the EIN that, or for the tax ID that is submitted. And what GCH's registry has done, the new short code registry has done, is really helpful in that they are doing that data validation. So if you put in a certain country, it's going to look for that tax ID in a certain format, and that will help make sure that you have coordinated the two. For PIN email issues, I think we already talked. One of the issues that comes up, and we already did address this, is free email domains like a gmail.com. There's no way to positively associate a Gmail email domain with a particular company. And so, as we mentioned, there are fairly restrictive conditions under which we can accept those for now, but the carriers are really tightening down on that, and they really are looking for a positive association between the email domain and the company. I will mention that if all the company has, most companies have a website, and so they will have some kind of web administrator, and they probably have a support at or info at. We can use those as long as we can associate the email domain with the company. Email domain not matching legal entity. Ariel actually addressed that pretty well. If they can show their ownership of that legal entity, so if we refuse it saying we can't associate the two, that just means that we need evidence. And if you can provide us evidence that you are paying for that domain, that will allow us to use that and move forward and complete the PIN email verification. We already talked about what happens if they don't receive it. Of course, they want to try to whitelist it on their firewalls, but we've run into some companies that say they're unable to whitelist email domains, in which case let us know, and we'll start that conversation, that email conversation back and forth, so that we can complete the process. We are looking into, throughout the industry, we're looking into alternatives to email contact, but none of that is in place as yet. So we have come up with ways. I don't think we've encountered any situation that we couldn't work around through some of the methods that we've come up with. And if you need the PIN email reissued, just reach out. That's no problem. Happy to do it. There is a time limit, simply because after, honestly, let's all be honest, as soon as we perform the vet, the company could change. So we want to put a reasonable time frame on there. The time frame that we put on there is 45 days. Within 45 days, we can use the same results, same vetting results, and we just have to reissue the PIN email. After that 45 days, we need to re-vet. And happy to answer any other questions.
There's one other question that's coming up, and this has been asked lots of different places, lots of different ways. I think, Jeff Simmons, you should pay attention to this question. It's about brand registration, thinking about political messaging and the need for campaign verified tokens when someone identifies himself as doing political messaging. So
do.
I will let Mr. Simmons handle that one.
I can help Jeff out, because I think the question that's being asked here is there a way that we're identifying political brands? And it's the very first question that gets asked, Dave, is you mark it as political here and provide the identifying information. And then that brand becomes associated with a political campaign type. And when you're coming through to associate it with a short code, you'll need to pick a short code that has been purchased as standard. Do I have one that's in progress or not completed yet? Here we go. And choose political as the intended usage. And the only brands that will show up inside of here are political brands. So you're associating both a political code alongside a brand that has been vetted as political.
Thank
Yep.
you, Ariel. That was awesome.
You're very welcome. I've seen, Greg, that you've been responding via chat to some of the questions that came in while JT was talking, to hit them quickly for the rest of folks, because those comments aren't flowing through. Another learning about how Teams webinars works. Aggregators are notified when a brand is up through revet for reporting, and the leaseholder that was the one who onboarded the brand in the first place is notified that a brand is up for revet 2 weeks prior to brand expiration. And the way to easily see if there are brands that are needing revet is you can do it inside of this needs action tab, sorting. There's not very many here, but you can sort it by brand status, looking for those brands that say confirm for revetting. And I think, Andrew, that answers your question as well, when a brand is ready for revet. All right. I think we are at time. So I see a couple more questions came in. Dave, we'll reach back out to you after this meeting to give you some written responses. And if anybody else has additional questions as well, please do not hesitate to reach out. Happy to answer anything that you need. Last slide that I'll put on the screen is key changes to be aware of is that brand content provider vetting is now done independent of the lease purchase. That onboarding process of associating the brand content provider and short code to create a statement, and annual revetting is not automatically resubmitted. You have to take the action to submit that brand for revetting. And here's the timeline that we are working off of. So just a reminder here, we are shutting down the transition site for payment edits as of December 28th. The existing iConnective registry is being shut down at 3 o'clock on December 31st. We are in a maintenance window from January 1st through the 4th. Happy New Year to everybody. And we officially go live on January 5th. And that is when all auto renewal payments will be processed where leases expired, that 6th through 9th period, and standard billing resumes as of January 10th. Thank you all so very much for joining us. John, thank you so much for providing best practices. Greg, thank you for keeping us on track with questions and your expertise. And of course, Jeff, thank you for having us. Any last words?
Just thanks, everybody. Hope you have a very happy holiday with your family and friends, safe. Know that we're still here working if you have needs, so don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything we can do to help. But we're excited about the new year and delighted you're all here today, and thank you for your continued support of the Short Code Registry.